Welcome to another ALIA graphic creator chat. Got a bit different this time. We're talking to some wonderful creators who are also publishers of comics. Bailey Sharp and Michael Hawkins, two of the people who run Glom Press. Glom Press is a risograph press and award-winning comics publisher. It's based out of Preston in Victoria, and as well as Bailey Sharp and Michael Hawkins, it's also run by Ben Ewers and Mark Pearson. Hi.
Hi.
So start off, I'd like to acknowledge the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation where I am. I think that's the land that Glum Press is on as well.
It is, yeah.
Acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded and pay respect to their elders past and present. So welcome to you both. Do you want to start by telling us a bit about yourselves and how did you first get interested in comics?
Who wants to go first?
Yeah, I guess, I was into comics as a child, you know, cartooning probably, my whole life. Then like in high school, I wanted to be more a visual artist. Then I wanted to get narrative involved because I wanted to be a film director. And then I kind of like discovered alternative comics and I was like, okay, I can be like a serious artist and be a cartoonist as well. And that was just the perfect fit for me.
I had a really similar, I didn't realize how similar maybe our life trajectories were. I only really got interested in comics when I was a teenager, but at the time I was I was always drawing, but I couldn't figure out an outlet for that. And I was making short films and thinking I would go like the route of being some kind of filmmaker, but then discovered, alternative comics and realized like, oh, I could tell I relate to these stories in a way that like, I've always been drawn to like cartoons and comics, but that was the first time that it was like, oh, I see like stories that I would want to also sort of tell in that kind of space.
So for the people listening who might not know much about alternative comics, have only had exposure to mainstream stuff. What makes a comic an alternative comic? What's the difference there?
Well, I know, I guess it's one of those things where it's really, I find that it's really the mainstream comics that are very specific just because superheroes dominate the genre so much. So alternative comics, can be pretty much anything else. You could compare them, I guess, to like Hollywood movies versus underground or art house movies. If you like, I guess that'd be a valid way for people to understand it. But other than that, it's a huge diverse range of stuff.
Yeah, okay. Sorry.
It would have been like self-published stuff initially, probably, in the 60s, 70s, like when underground comics really started. But now there are what I would call, I guess, mainstream publishers like Fantagraphics, like maybe not mainstream, big publishers that do publish alternative comics now for the last like 20 years or maybe a little bit more. But I agree. Like just anything outside of a sort of the big wheelhouse, like the big DC, Marvel kind of canons. But there are all kinds of streams of different kinds of alternative comics that are really different flavors of like storytelling and art.
Yeah, so lots to explore for people who aren't already across it. So that's comics. How did you both get interested in publishing? Because it's both talking about being creators. What had you interested in making that jump across to publishing other creators, helping other people get their work out there?
I guess I only really started at the point of Glom Press, other than, like editing a few anthologies, like zine anthologies. But I guess, it just happened fairly organically with Glom Press because like me and Mark bought a Rizzo machine we're using for our own work. Then we started doing print for hire work, and then it just seemed like a natural step to start publishing other cartoonists as well.
Yeah, and I was in a block of like a set of books that they put out in 2018, I think. And I knew Mark and Michael, like we all knew each other. But Ben and I, like we're partners. We were living in Sydney at the time, and we came down when Mark and Michael were printing my book, and we all sort of worked together to just print, and found that it was harmonious. Like we could do the work without just talking and just being friends and hanging out. And so that kind of planted the seed that like maybe Ben and I should come join Glom and turn it into a 4-person operation. Yeah.
So let's started to give us a bit of a background into the history, but how did Glom start and why? So you said you had these anthology zines, all of that. Where were you promoting them? How were you getting them out there? What did your role as a publisher look like? Probably for Michael a bit, if you were the one that, if Bailey and Ben came in a bit later.
Yeah, so I guess, the zines and stuff we've done previous to Glom Press, but I guess the idea with Glom Press was that, there are other sort of small run risograph presses in the world, publishers in the world, and we just felt like that was something that Australia could meet, because, there was this gap that we mentioned a lot between the zines, like self-published zines, and graphic novels, which is there's still not too many publishers in Australia that publish graphic novels. But yeah, that involves getting a professional deal, getting a contract on, so forth. So there was that. I feel like there was that. We thought there was that gap there, and that there was a lot of people that were between that place where they weren't quite applying to publishers yet, but they'd done a lot of zines, and we could easily identify people who were in that stage in their artistic development where doing a longer story or doing something that's slightly more professionally presented would really, be an advantage to them and would be really interesting to see.
Sorry, Bailey.
No, I was just gonna say, yeah, like both of us, all 4 of us, are really involved in the zine scene, and like I think we met around zines originally, and going to zine fairs, and me and Ben co-run Other Worlds, which is a Sydney zine fair that used to happen annually. We've had it on hold the last 2 years, but yeah, like we really come from that community, and most of the people that we've published are also pulled from that same community. Like they're all self-published artists in their own right, who aren't just shopping things around and waiting for a huge publisher to like swoop in. But then we can offer this this mid-tier book that's a more substantial book than a zine, but still like we're all sort of tied to that DIY ethos, like so we're kind of riding the line between professionalizing things but keeping it very the books are just handmade by us. We just have pieces of equipment that help us make them more of a we can perfect bind them with a glue binder, things like that, but they're still quite zine-like in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and just kind of extending, like as Bailey said, we're big into the zine fairs and stuff, so that's kind of like the starting point for us. And then I guess we're just trying to extend that and extend that into putting them in shops, shops overseas, that kind of thing, where it's kind of hard to do if you're just a zine public. If you're just like putting out your own zines, it's kind of hard to put like the admin into getting that reach and getting like shops engaging with shops and stuff.
Yeah. So I knew that you had a connection with zine fairs. A lot of the stuff that when I was looking at background of Glom and stuff, a lot of the stuff that was coming up was stuff with Festival of the Photocopier. So yeah, that you've been involved with a bit. Do you do much with places like Sticky Institute, all of that, like work with them, or is it a bit more separate and just the same people involved?
Yeah, I mean, we have a real relationship, and I think, yeah, like Festival of the Photocopier is always like a high point of the year for us, and we always, we'll plan releases around it. Yeah, keep it in mind a lot. So we love being involved in that. And yeah, unfortunately, it didn't happen this year. Unfortunately, we had the online version earlier in the year than what was going to be the in-person version in August. Of course, had to be cancelled. Bailey volunteers at Sticky though, so maybe you could elaborate on that. Or you used to.
I used to, but yeah, I think our relationship with Sticky is really good. They're like very warm, nice zine people, and stock the books, promote the books. We've always had I think, slight worry that the work that we do put into the books may pop them outside of the zine. Like we don't, we want to make these books that, yeah, like Michael's describing, can go into bookstores and are a little meatier than what a 24-page zine, but we don't want to also like step too far away from that, because we really like that culture, and sometimes it can feel like it's like, oh, is this still a zine? Is it truly? But Sticky have always been really supportive of us, and we've used their photocopier quite a lot too, like to put out a book. Mir Schlossberg had a title, I'm gonna get the name wrong, guidebook to queer Jewish spirituality, and that was a Rizzo cover, but black and white inside, printed just on Sticky's photocopier for a long time.
So the publisher, you've chose to call it Glom Press. What's the significance behind that name?
It was just one of those spontaneous things we came up with, because me and Mark had we're trying to think of a name, and we had these pages and pages of lists, and all these like long 5-word names and acronyms, and so I think, yeah, and then I think I just said once, we need a name that people can glom onto. And it was just one of those moments of, yeah. And so I guess we hope people can glom onto our comics. It's also good having a really short word that's easy to say if you have to say it a million times to each other.
So definitely something in there for the marketing people out there in libraries working out how to do stuff like that. So yeah. So you mentioned there was a gap in the Australian publishing industry that you felt wasn't being met. What was it that made you realise there was this gap? How'd that come about, and what made you realise you were positioned to help fill it?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that was more Mark's idea. I have to credit him with that. But I guess identifying it as just from being in the Australian comics scene for a long time, and you kind of see that, there's people working in zines, and there's not that many Australian publishers publishing comics, and it seems when all friends and colleagues and people we've worked with, when they were getting big enough to take that next step, they were going overseas, because, you essentially had to like move overseas, usually to the US, to really, build any relationship with publishers and so forth. So I guess, yeah, that was just apparent to us that was there. And I guess just by virtue of having risograph machines, we thought maybe we could, try and address that in our own modest way.
Yeah, because I think especially there are 3 artists who we're thinking of are kind of as contemporaries in the sort of same pool: Simon Hanseman, Tommy Parrish, Lee Lai. All of them have left Australia. and had great book deals with Fantagraphics and Drawn and Quarterly. But like, I think the most recent sort of success story I would say of this like project might be that like Rachel Ang is an artist who Glom published in that first set of books that they brought out. She has a book Swimsuit, and that off the back of the strength of that got sent to or shown to publishers at Drawn and Quarterly, which is based in Montreal and is one of the big alternative comics publishers. And she's now got a 2-book deal with them. And that's kind of what we were trying to do. It's like,
yeah, absolutely.
had she made that here as a zine or, you know, just published it herself, would it ever have made it over to Drawn and Quarterly? You know, maybe. Not trying to denigrate the work, not saying like we played some huge role in it, but I think like that is what we wanted to happen. Like, is that people in Australia, like here, it's just another way of distributing their work, getting attention to their work, and then if they, you know, make that leap to a publisher, maybe they don't have to leave Australia now necessarily to do that. But.
Yeah, I'd say that was always part of the plan, and hopefully it'll happen again, is to, get that attention to the book. I think also the role we play in that is that I'm not sure how many of the 12 books we've published exactly, but most of them are generally works that the artist made once we made the offer. And a lot of cartoonists generally, if they're just self-publishing zines, they're not, you know, really going to make to just off the bat just make a, you know, 100-page 2-color comic, because it's just too ambitious. Generally, if you're paying yourself to get it published and whatnot. So, I guess that's part of this thing of like, we'd like so-and-so, like we'd like to see a long story by them, and, you know, like we can instigate that, and then they have that long story, and then they can take that, to move forward in general with their creative development and their career.
Yeah, well, it's interesting you mentioned Swimsuit. That's one of the, I'm just looking at it right now on the shelves that I keep right by my desk. I really like it, and it's one of the comics that I regularly use as an example of the variety that's out there within comics. But what you said about Rachel Ang publishing that, getting the deal with Montreal, all this, how much of a role do you see yourselves having long-term working with artists, and how much is them moving on to bigger publishers an important part of the journey that for them?
I think it depends on the artist, really. I mean, I don't think everybody has that same goal, and so we wouldn't be like, you know, I don't think everybody sees this as like a stepping stone to a bigger publisher necessarily. But I do think, I mean, we just want to put out we just want to put out work that maybe wouldn't exist otherwise, or it wouldn't exist in this format. And hopefully, like, for some people that helps them, you know, get, if they want to take that somewhere, it's there. But we're also making it to enrich the scene here. So I don't want to pose it too much as like a pathway to somewhere else. I think,
absolutely. Like, it's just to exist in itself, and like for the books to be made and read in their own right is, you know, like that's like the main point, or the first step, I guess. But yeah, in terms of relationship with artists, I'd say we do differ from a lot of from bigger publishers, in that like a bigger publisher might, you know, sign up an artist and put their book out, and they might want to put another book out and another book out, and kind of have that relationship with the artist where, you know, they're in a sort of stable, and we might work with artists multiple times for sure, but yeah, we don't really need to keep them as our artists, because it's like, we know that, you know, there's a limited amount of like copies of the book we're going to publish. We're only, you know, going to do a number of copies in the hundreds. So we wouldn't expect an artist to like stay loyal as one of our stable or anything. It's more a more temporary or casual, I guess, like artist publisher relationship.
Yeah. We have loose contracts, I suppose, because we give advances, but we don't. We try to be as like hands off as possible. It's not like we take like people have brought up the possibility of shopping around their books after we've run out of our, like as Michael's saying, after our print runs inevitably, because it's so hands-on making the books, and it's such a labor-intensive process with where we have to do the printing sort of all at once. So once those books run out, people have asked us, can I shop it around to potentially another publisher, and we're totally happy with that. Yeah, we want as a little like kind of we don't want to own anything. We're trying to, it's a community sort of press, I think.
So still, even though you're starting to move away from that zine level, still very much that zine culture behind it of creator owned, creator controlled.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's in contracts such as they are is, yeah, absolutely 100%. Artist keeps the rights and everything. Yeah.
So, what impact has COVID and the lockdowns in Melbourne had on Glom Press? Guessing it's been harder to get the books out there, to make the connections with the creators that you're working with. What's that looked like for you as a publisher?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, it's really complicated. There's all sorts of ins and outs to it. I think, the initial struggle we had was we're about to release our last set of books, our last set of 6 books in 2020. Obviously that went pear-shaped, and we had to delay it. And we, some artists were struggling to complete their books because, of all the extra complication and stress that was put on everyone. So that ended up in a long delay, and we did end up publishing them earlier this year, and we were just really lucky that we were able to put them out between lockdowns and find a venue that had a really good capacity and was open for events. So I guess that's the most significant way it's affected us. I don't know, can you think of anything else, Bailey?
Yeah, I mean, to that point, we were so lucky. We're some of the few, like, I know so many people who put out books in the last 2 years and not been able to have any in person. So we just got this like really lucky window where we could have a launch. But I mean, it's affected, like now this current lockdown. Ben and I live over 10K or over 5K from Glom Press, which is in Preston, and Mark and Michael live like the press is in their house, so they've got access all the time. But we haven't been able to come work for 2.5 months now, or something like that, and it's been that way. It's been on and off. The rules allowing us to come and do stuff there. So that's also like we've got books in production now. We've got a lot of print jobs that Glom is taking on, and it's all Mark and Michael. They're the only ones who can do it. So it's kind of put a lot, I think, on them.
Ben and Bailey are doing a lot of admin from their end, though, so write yourself up too. It's interesting Bailey mentioned the print jobs, because we do print for hire as well. And I guess one positive note I've noticed recently is we've been really super busy during this latest lockdown. So I guess, I don't know, maybe like Melbourne artists are getting very good at being in lockdowns and getting really productive. Also, the other Melbourne risograph presses, the other main two, Helio and Tree Paper Comics, as far as I know, shut out of their studio. So that's not such a positive note. But,
that's why it helps to have the press in your kitchen.
Yeah.
Yes, I can definitely relate to that. I'm out east, and I've got surrounded. You can't see because of my background, but I'm surrounded by boxes of books from the library that have been rerouted here, so I can catalogue them and then take them in once lockdown ends. So Yeah, very, very weird times. So happy to hear that you guys are still able to function reasonably well.
Yeah.
Not so great about the others, but yeah, it's great that you guys have been able to continue through it. Now, as far as publishing itself goes, I've seen on your website some of the stuff that you're offering. It takes a wide range. You've got some perfect bound books, so what you traditionally think of as a paperback, and that's what libraries would usually be looking at collecting. But you also, I've seen, publish a few saddle stitch, so that's with the staples in the back for those who don't know. And circulating libraries tend to be very reluctant to add things that aren't either proper hardcover or perfect bound paperbacks because of the ease that they can get damaged. Do you have any tips for librarians who might be looking to add these sorts of materials for their collections about looking after them and just how to manage them in the collection?
Yeah, it's hard to say really. I mean, we do focus for the other artists we publish. We focus on the perfect bound books just for that reason, because it's like not just libraries but bookshops as well are much more amenable to bringing in like anything with a spine. Yeah, how to take care of them. Yeah, I mean that is hard, especially with risograph, because that can very the ink can rub off sometimes, and yeah, that kind of thing. But yeah, I really don't know, because I don't know what sort of like techniques or like whether librarians have used like plastic sleeves or what kind of covers or protectors they use. But yeah.
Some of the books have been, I've seen them laminated. Like we have some, I can't keep track. It's been the work of like very lovely librarians who've reached out to us and put the books into their collections. And I've seen that they have laminated the outsides to help get around that problem of the Rizzo ink, because it's a little bit like kind of dusty. It's not totally stable, that coming off. I think is a real big problem. Yeah, in terms of like the saddle stitch and zine stuff, I mean, I know I haven't gone to, but I've heard of the massive zine collection in like the state library, which is but it's not public. It's just in boxes, and you go in and you have to go in with gloves and look through the boxes, and which is not like a that's like archival, not browsal.
Yeah.
But
so well, I think from memory, I think you can browse it, but it's a research request thing. So they'll make it available to anyone, but you have to put in the request first, I think.
Yeah, and I guess that might be because they feel like if people were looking through them every day, or if they were in a lending library, that they'd be damaged, I suppose. But
yeah. So yeah, and the state library sits in an unusual position where they're trying to collect the archival record of Victoria in that way for all forms of publishing and zines and small runs and stuff are an important part of that. So I think it's really great what they're engaging with this aspect. And yeah, so you said as part of this, what you've seen was because libraries have reached out to you. What relationship do you have with libraries, both as publishers and as creators yourselves?
yeah, I mean, I think we just don't really have one at the moment. We'd like to. I think it's just been a big oversight because we've been unsure of what to sort of do, like how to go about that. But we would love the books to be, especially the the sets that we put out. And like Michael says, it's really the books that we publish for other people primarily are all have the perfect binding. So we'd love to get them into libraries. And we know some librarians, and that's or have friendly relationships with some librarians, and that's the only way it's happened so far is just them being really proactive. So we really probably need to get on it and be proactive.
Yeah. Yeah, but if any librarians are watching this and want to contact us, it is most welcome.
Yeah, well, that'd be great. And so that's both as publishers and as creators yourselves. Do you see a difference in the relationship that you have with places like libraries, bookstores, all of that, as creators and as publishers, or is it kind of the same for both?
I mean, I think to what Michael said earlier, or I think this is what you're alluding to, Michael, maybe, is like if I, me as a creator, if I go to a bookstore with my single book, even if it's perfect bound, like there's just there's a real barrier to like maybe I could stock it, it's not like people don't go and stock their self-published work, but I think just coming to someone as a publisher already like sets up some kind of professionalism or some kind of system in which like it's easier to see like how we can negotiate getting them into bookstores or getting them into libraries. I would think that's like I feel like that's for the artists we publish. I can't imagine a lot of them like approaching a library with their own self-published work. So hopefully that is something that we should be doing on that behalf.
And just like definitely because we're a publisher and because we're offering like a collection, I assume that makes a difference to people because it's like it must be like I guess it'd be less attractive for them to like have to have this admin and this conversation with all these individuals, whereas like it seems like much much more worthwhile and easy for them to like have like this relationship with an entity that can give them like half a dozen books, a dozen books.
And that was part of the reason for, this is when the press was still just run by Mark and Michael, but the first set of books, the reasoning behind creating a set of 6 was in part to like get them into bookstores so that you're not approaching them with a single title, but instead a set. And that, it seems to have worked. We've gotten in bookstores, but I imagine that might have played a role in them accepting it, is that they're not just stocking one single weird thing that's different from the rest, like it's its own little mini section. Like 6 books is quite a lot.
And is that why you've continued that with because this is your this latest set of 6 was a new set on that? So was that the reasoning behind continuing with that set?
That format worked really well for us. So we thought, we'd do that again. In future, like the things we work on now are a little more ad hoc because I feel like now we have that, like, those 2 collections behind us. So we have like those established like a dozen titles at least, plus a few more. So I think now we're loosening up a bit. And we're contacting artists just like, more here and there and like doing different formats of books and different types of books.
And looking to what you're doing in the future, where do you see yourself staying in this area, or do you see expanding into other areas of different styles of publishing, all of that, or how do you see Glom going forwards?
Well, we try not to look too far ahead because I think we're quite a small operation, so you don't want to have this grand scheme all planned out, but we usually just a little in advance of like, oh, what can we try next? What we can try next? And it'd be like, different, slightly different ideas and approaches, or somewhat different ideas and approaches, but I guess still within that same level of publishing for the foreseeable future of that kind of mid-level.
Yeah, we're talking about things now, about what we might do down the line. That's a little bit different, trying to mix things up a little bit more, I think, like to Michael's point about we're taking on more single title books that are going to have their own, the set are all the same dimension, but, the single titles are going to be, whatever the artist wants, and trying out slightly different things, and but all within the same, with the same kind of goals and ethos and print run roughly.
So earlier this year, Glom Press as a company won the Platinum Ledger at the recently renamed Comic Arts Awards of Australia. So it used to be the Ledger Awards. And they're Australia's premier comic award, run out of WA, I think, from memory, by, and his name's going to escape me right now. Sorry?
Bruce Mutard is
yes.
Yes.
Thank you. So congratulations on that. What does that mean, that win? Well, first off, why do you feel that was given to you? Like, what were you doing that is making you so important to the industry? And what did the win mean to you, both individually and as a company?
I guess, being relatively inexperienced in publishing, we're still kind of trying to suss out, how that actually translates into the attention you get and the sales you get, and how you're viewed in the future. So we're still seeing how that is works out. Of course, we're really honoured to get it. We're really happy to get it. I think, I guess there's a relatively small comics industry in Australia, so I guess we stood out for that reason. But not sure what brought us to their attention exactly, but we're very pleased with that.
I mean, I think it just speaks to maybe the lack of, I forget what the ledger sort of wording is, like the Silver Ledger, but it's like community based comics, something like that, and that's sort of how we think about Glom. Like I said earlier, it's we're not like a commercial publisher exactly. We're more about building a scene and supporting a scene, and so I think that's why. It's because there's just not a whole lot of initiatives like that at the moment. And one thing we were talking about, we talk about sort of frequently, is that that maybe this award, or like the more that people can be encouraged to, like, we would love to see other micro presses like us emerge across Australia. There's no competition here, like I think at the level that we're at. We would love to see other presses doing the same thing, and like if this award goes any way to, like, the existence of the award itself, goes any way to like facilitating or making people think about doing something like this, or getting into publishing comics, like that is, I think, I would say it would be one of the bigger benefits of it.
Well, from what I've seen of your work, I think saying that you got it because there wasn't a lot of competition out there is definitely selling yourselves very short. Very well-deserved award. And what you said about just then about hoping to see more micro presses around Australia, what what does a thriving Australian comics industry look like to you? Across Australia, micro presses, major publishers being based here, and how do we get there?
I think more people making comics is maybe just as the base probably needs to have, like, there are definitely cartoonists around Australia, but it's still a relatively small pool of people. So the more people that are like reading comics, getting into it, having maybe the same experience that Michael and I had of discovering that the storytelling potential's totally unlimited. Like that, if that could expand and grow, I think that that would help have a lot of knock-on effects in terms of getting people into publishing comics. Like existing publishers thinking more about publishing comics, and hopefully we can also have an impact in that area. Like if we could get, like I said, I was talking about Rachel Ian getting that deal with Drawn and Quarterly. There's still a publisher based in another country, in Canada. It would be great if publishers here were getting more into supporting comics, or even if some homegrown larger publishers could merge to publish, I don't want to call them graphic novels, but book versions, bigger books. I think that would be what I'd like to see. I don't quite know how we get there, except that I think we need more people reading and making comics, really.
So that's bringing us towards the end of the questions I had for you. But before we go, what from each of you? We ask this to all our people who we have in our chats. 3 comics or graphic novels that you've enjoyed recently and that you would encourage others to check out.
I've got my props ready.
Okay. Yeah, I had a few. Want to shout out. This is Grip by Lali Vestwind. She's an American cartoonist who's been putting stuff out for a decade or so, and this was put out by another risograph press called Perfectly Acceptable Press out of Chicago. And yeah, it's just a fantastic, it's a very unique book. It's really like a wordless story that has to do just with actions and a lot with labor. So it's a very exploring the potential of depicting movement in comics, but also like taking that to a kind of deeper meaning about what labor is, particularly women's labor. But yeah, so I really like that book. I just finished this Japanese graphic novel called Otherworld Barbara by Mato Hajio. She's a veteran manga artist, really pioneered stuff in the late 60s and 70s. And this is a later period work, which is like a surreal sci-fi kind of epic with some sort of soap opera-y like overtones that I really enjoyed. I really liked the scope of Japanese comics, and this was really, something that was really engaging to really got stuck into. And the last one I thought I mentioned would be Conditions on the Ground by Kevin Huyman. He's an artist that's really prolific, hasn't been published that much, like Floating World Comics put this out. They're a comic book shop and small publisher in Portland. It's got a very Pacific Northwest feel, all very like organic looking and kind of loose and just weird and funny. I don't know how else to describe it, but yeah, it's a really good collection, I thought. Yeah.
I was going to say, these are borrowed from Mark actually, but I've got the first two editions of Sunday by Olivier Schrauen. And this comes from also a Rizzo Press, Colorama in Berlin. And I just think that Olivier's work right now is probably, he had a big book come out a few years ago called Arsene Schrauen. And that was probably, I think that's the best comics work that's come out probably in the last like 5-10 years. And his style is great. His storytelling is really great. And these are like a serialized, there's a third one that's just come out, but haven't ordered it yet. Just the problem with loving these, like, as Michael said earlier, there are all these like risograph outposts around the world, but it's like, really got to pool together, like wait until they put out a few things and like we order them together because the shipping is insane. But I would look at his work, or anything from Colorama. They have a lot of great artists that they work with. I got this book today. I don't know if I can plug a book I've only just started reading, but I've been looking forward to it for a long time, called Discipline by Dash Shaw. Who's a really prolific American comics artist. I like his work's always really experimental. Like no book is kind of too much like his last book. He's also an animator. He just put out a movie that's kind of making the rounds. Completely blanking on the name of it. But this is like a Civil War era kind of diaristic, sort of very loose kind of storytelling. I just get little diary entries of this soldier throughout, but it's really about these like kind of beautiful, disconnected drawings. So I'm getting pretty into it so far. The third book, I think we've loaned to somebody, so I don't have it on hand. But Safdar Ahmed's Still Alive, which came out, was published by 12 Panel Press, which is also based in Melbourne, came out, I think, at the beginning of this year. And it's kind of about, like, big picture about the Australian detention system, like the history of it, how it came to be the way it is, and then its impact and inhumanity, based on personal relationships that Safdar has and has built with refugees through Refugee Art Project, which he runs, which is like, it used to be just him going to places like Villawood Detention Center and sitting down with people and drawing with them and talking to them, people who are detained, and his relationships with them outside of that as well. And it's a really great book, and really like explores this unwieldy thing, this detention center. I mean, the way that has developed in Australia, and it's a great overview of the whole system, a system that's kind of can be sort of abstract, I think, for a lot of people.
Well, there's some great options there, and my favorite thought that, with the exception of Still Alive, yes, Still Alive. From what I was going to say, Staying Alive, but that's the Bee Gees. Still Alive by Safdar Ahmed, I've read. The others will all be new, although a couple of the creators I had heard of. So yeah, looking forward to getting my hands on those. Thank you very much for joining us here. If libraries are interested in getting in contact, what's the best way for them to engage with Glom Press?
Just send us an email. We'll just glompress at Gmail. Yeah, we'd love to hear from libraries, talk to librarians.
And we're easy to find, glompress.com, if they want to go on there first and like check out what we've got available. So yeah.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much.